What am I doing here? Okay, I'm not from Soweto, but I am an education activist, and I work for the One Goal campaign. I'm here representing millions of children, education activists, students, teachers, people from around the world who've come together to campaign on education. Let me just start with telling a little bit about myself before I go on about the campaign. I grew up in Cambridge. I traveled around Africa a lot. I spent a lot of time in South Africa. I finally came back to South Africa and call it my home. At school, I was often miserable, sometimes bored, but I loved geography. I especially loved the world of plate tectonics and glaciers and this world that took me beyond the classroom walls. Education, helped me kind of like discover, it gave me many, many opportunities. And it was at university that I kind of created this new world. It's where I became a feminist. So how far have we come? We've come a really, really long way. It's amazing. In 2000, there was 115 million children that were out of school. That was higher than ever before. The whole teachers, students, unions, activists, organizations were really dismayed. For the first time ever, education had actually gone downhill. From 1990 to 2000, education had got worse than ever before. And so what we did is we all united to form what's called the Global Campaign for Education. And what everyone did was come together, whether it was toy-toying, whether it was lobbying, whether it was standing to account and going, you know what, it's 2000, enough is enough. Education, we really need to make sure that it's important. So when world leaders met at the World Education Forum in Dakar, this Global Campaign for Education held them to account. They said, okay, now's your moment. We want to make sure that we influence your agenda and that we want to see some progress. And out of that meeting came promises. They promised to make sure that everyone had an education by 2015. That's 5 years' time. They promised to make sure that the resources were available, that every rich country would make sure that any of the lacking resources from poor countries would be made up with that money. So we got some really fabulous promises. And since then, we've been campaigning every year to hold those governments to account. One of the best examples I can think of is in Kenya, where the campaign set about to hold Kibaki to his promise on free education. And every year, they continue to campaign until 2003, Kibaki announced free education for every child. So that was a huge success. Overnight, 1.7 million children went back to school. So just in a very short time span, we had a massive success. Since then, campaigns have continued around the world. I mean, this is a couple of examples. That's actually Senegal, Honduras, Bangladesh, and Niger. And all of these campaigns are uniting in different ways to hold their governments to account. And over the years, it's not just Kenya, but it's hundreds of other countries which have made huge progress. And actually, the numbers of children out of school has dropped dramatically from 115 to 72 million. So when people ask me sometimes, do you feel like you're having any impact? Do you feel like you're having any success? And I'm like, absolutely. I mean, that's 43, is it 43? Is it 47 million more children in school? I should work that out because I do have an education. But it's huge. In 10 years, the fact that we've had that kind of impact is massive. So it really gives us hope. That's how far the campaign's come, but it's only happened that way because they've been uniting all these people from around the world. I want to introduce you to Devli. Devli is one of the most amazing people I've ever met. Devli is a young girl in India, and she grew up on a stone quarry. So generations before her family had been sold to a stone quarry. She'd never seen outside the stone quarry. She lived in a cave with her parents and her siblings. The only thing she was given to eat was potatoes. And every day she went and she broke rocks with stones from a really tiny, tiny age. Obviously, she'd never seen a TV, a book, a pencil, but she'd literally never seen anything outside the stone quarry. Obviously, this is incredibly rare. So she But it's one of, like, absolutely of despair, of no hope, of no ability to have that kind of interaction, of that imagination to be able to feed, or the hope of being able to, like, fill your dreams. And then when Devli was 8, thank goodness, her family and Devli were rescued overnight by one of the members of the Global Campaign for Education, the Global March Against Child Labour. They rescued her and her family, and they took her to a safe house. And for the first time ever, she experienced this world, her family has experienced this world outside the stone quarry. And obviously, in a kind of a way to kind of, like, you know, to feast all of your senses. And Devli, like many other young children, was an amazing child that was just waiting to have that opportunity. So not only when she was in the safe house, she also went to school, and there she flourished. She became this really young, boisterous, chatty girl. She kind of thrived, and really quickly she learned to read and write. She voiced her concerns, and she voiced her concerns that everyone should have an education, that no child should have to grow up like that. No child should have to go through what she went through. And everyone should have these opportunities in life. So she started to campaign locally in India and tell her friends and the community around her how important education is, and tell them to get back to school. She became a little community leader. And from there, she also then went to the Indian government and started marching and started, like, shouting and going, education is really important. I met Devli 2 years ago in New York, where she came and she met. She met with Gordon Brown, Queen Rania, Zapatero, Ban Ki-moon. And she stood on a stage, and I don't know how she did it, but she stood on a stage. It was amazing. And she, from the top of her lungs, she gulped in the air, and she shouted out her story. And I think there wasn't a single person in the audience who wasn't close to tears. And at the end of it, she said, you know, if I can be a leader in my community to get every child into school, so can you. And I think it was something that was a really strong message. And she's only 11. But what we want to make sure is that every Devli is what Devli is today, and no one should have to go through what she went through before. Where are we now? We've come a really, really long way. There's absolutely no doubt about it. You know, the fact that Devli's got an education, thousands, millions more like her in India are now getting the chance. We saw huge, big numbers in Africa get back to school. But the fact of the matter is that there's still millions left out of school, and millions when they're in school, they don't have textbooks, they don't have ceilings or windows. More importantly, they don't have teachers. Sometimes they get beaten. Worse, students even get raped at school. It's absolutely a global travesty. We're still not there. We know we can do it, but we're not there. So as I said earlier on, rich countries promised to make the finances available to pay for any lack of money that wasn't there to make education for all possible. What's currently missing from rich countries is $12 billion US. So to put that into context, that's all of the rest of education. So all those unpaid teachers in poor countries where the money is not coming through, we could provide education for every child for $12 billion US. That's really not very much money when you put it into the bigger scheme of things. But that's the money that's not coming through. It's not coming through. The money from Europe's not coming through. It's not coming through from Japan. The US is not coming through. And what we're continuing to do is continue to lobby and pressure to make sure that that money does come through and it is effective and it gets spent where it needs to be spent. Japan currently spends a lot of its money on paying a few university places, but not paying for the teachers and classrooms which they've promised, which could make such a massive difference in millions of billions of lives. And to just put that figure into context, last year the US and the Europe Bailout came to a sum of $15.6 trillion US. The money's there, it's available. We need to see that come through. And just to give you kind of an example of what it means by that money not coming through, Zambia, between 1970 and 2005, they couldn't actually afford to give any of their teachers a wage increase. That's 35 years. The teachers were still earning the same amount. How can we expect teachers to inspire our children when they can hardly feed their own? These teachers are holding down other jobs or not going into teaching. You know, if it's not even going to make your way in life, why would you become a teacher? Which is also a global travesty. There are other examples where people haven't, or countries haven't prioritized education. Sudan, 70% of their budget goes to the military. Less than 1% goes to education. Benin, 10% of children that go to school are girls. What kind of future does that offer you when so many countries prioritize men? What kind of future does a girl have if they can't go to school in the first place and begin to conquer their dreams? How can they conquer them before their husbands and their society conquer them? The FIFA have made many announcements about legacies, and the very first kind of World Cup, and hopefully not the last, which is taking place here in this continent, and they keep talking and touting this chance to leave lasting legacies long beyond the final whistle is blown. So what we're doing is we're mobilizing and we're cashing in on that opportunity. It's our 2010 cash-in goal. But I think it is a huge moment. I've been to places and meetings where FIFA's been touted as more important than the UN. But there is a huge, massive global platform of bringing together people, and the momentum which we're seeing at the moment is really unique. There is this moment of we can do it, we can have our moment, we can bring everyone together now. So what One Goal is doing is we're doing many things around this campaign. And we already have the sign-in of Seb Blatter, he's one of the co-chairs, Gordon Brown, Zapatero, Sarkozy, Ban Ki-moon, Hillary Clinton. They've all signed in and they've all said, yeah, let's leave a lasting legacy of education. I support One Goal. And that's great, and it is really good. It is driving huge momentum, but we're also doing as a campaign is that we're mobilizing millions of people around the world to hold them to account. So President Zuma is hosting during the World Cup, an education summit of heads of state. So he's sitting them around a round table of hopefully Obama's and several other leaders to say, what are we going to do about education? The summit is specifically on education. It's an amazing moment. It's an amazing opportunity. We want to see new promises and new commitments come out of that. But we can only do that by making our voices heard. So what One Goal is doing is it's uniting people at the moment to raise your voice, to tweet, to march, to send in yellow cards. Oh, this is something that happened just in the last week. Japan's already collected, I've got no idea what that says, but I'm hoping it's a message on education. They did tell me it was. Yellow warning cards, the universally recognized warning when you want to get someone off the pitch. So we're collecting thousands of yellow cards from around the world. We're beginning to see them come back from South Africa and from across the continent. And we will be delivering these yellow cards, warning cards, to heads of state personally at this summit. We'll be marching, we'll be lobbying, we'll be doing whatever it takes to make sure that we're heard. And then just to bring us back to South Africa, I mean, you said yourself, it's 16 years today, and more than ever, children are waiting for an equal education. There's a lot of amazing things which are happening here, but education is more unequal than ever. It's no better shown than in these statistics. Out of 500,000 black learners in the system, 57% matriculate. And out of a mere 41,000 white students, 99% pass matric. It's 2010. Rural schools continue to struggle on all fronts. Windows, toilets, textbooks, teachers, classrooms, you name it, it's just not there. So what we're trying to do is also make sure that people fully participate here. You know, there's a lot of the budget that goes to education, but I know everyone here at some point has probably in the talks taught about education and how important it is. And we're trying to readdress that and make sure that that trend does change. But on a upward note, the struggle is alive. I mean, I'm working with really amazing people, a few of them which are in the audience now, to really make sure that that does happen, that happens really quickly. One of which is Equal Education. They're doing really amazing, awesome stuff. And they've only been around 2 years. And already they've had campaigns in Kailicha to get schools which had fixed windows, and the Department of Education said, no, we can't pay any money. But they've managed to get huge amounts of attention to get thousands of rands back to those schools. They're marching across the country. At the moment, they're leading a campaign, which I definitely recommend you to check out, called One School, One Library, One Librarian. They're marching across the country. The Public Participation in Education Network has recently been set up to get the public re-engaging in education, going back to schools, engaging in whatever way it takes. And those organizations, many others, the unions, are all coming back together at the moment around one goal and what's happening in the next 2 months. And it's amazing to see this amount of energy that's come together to try and put a change to it. So, yeah, I want to leave you on a note of imagine this. I'm just going to flick through some photos. And I want you to imagine that in 50 years' time, less, actually in our lifetime, every one of those children could have an education. We know it's possible. We absolutely, we have the tools. We're not waiting for some magic cure. Like education, we know what it needs. It just needs money, it needs resources, it needs political willpower, and it needs the public to engage. And what's happened in the last 10 years is truly inspiring, but we need to do more. Thank you. I'm just going to leave with a short film.
When I get older, I will be stronger. They'll call me freedom, just like a waving flag.
Please sign your name for those who can't. Support one goal.
We have one goal, to give every child the right to an education, but we need millions of signatures to make that happen.
One goal.
We are determined that the 2010 FIFA World Cup should leave a legacy for education on this continent.
I'm Danny Jordan, and I support one goal.
As we come together for the World Cup, let's remember that millions of children are still on the sidelines without an education. And none of us can win when so many of us are left behind.
Let's make the legacy of this World Cup education for all.
I'm Quentin Fortune, and I signed up for one goal.
Sign your name for one goal, because every child deserves an education. One name, one child, one goal.
I am Marcel Desailly, and I have signed for one goal.
Je suis Zinedine Zidane, et j'ai signé pour one goal.
When I leave school, I want to be a pilot, and I want to learn how to fly helicopters and aeroplanes.
We are the Blasters. We support one goal.
I'm Aaron Mokwena, and I have signed for one goal.
Education 1, poverty 0.
I am Roman van Persie, and I have signed for one goal. Will you?
One goal.
One goal.
One goal. One goal.
Let's make the legacy of this World Cup education for all.
Together we can make universal education in Africa a reality.
I call on world leaders and people everywhere to join me in signing on to the One Goal campaign.
The greatest of injustices demands the boldest of action by the best of people.
Now that is a goal worth cheering for.
Ancora oggi un bambino su 5 non sa leggere.
One goal. One goal.
One name, one child.
One goal. Sign up to one goal and help get my friend to school.
Support one goal.